A silhouette collapsed in blinding white. Every winter claims its victims in Wyoming's unforgiving wilderness, but beneath this fallen Mustang lay a secret that would challenge everything we understand about wild horses. When three weathered ranchers discovered what the stallion was shielding with his dying body, they witnessed a sacrifice that transcends instinct, a story of protection that nature never intended, yet love demanded. The February blizzard descended on Wyoming's red desert with merciless fury, transforming the landscape into a white void where nothing survived without shelter. Jake Morrison, his weathered face etched with 40 years of ranch life, squinted through the frost-coated windshield as his truck crawled along the boundary fence. Beside him, Tom and Miguel sat in tense silence, their breath fogging the glass. They'd set out searching for Jake's missing cattle, but fate had prepared a different encounter, one that would haunt their memories forever. "Stop!" Miguel suddenly shouted, his gloved hand pointing toward a dark shape barely visible through the curtain of swirling snow. "There's something out there." Jake hit the brakes, the truck sliding slightly on the ice-slicked ground. Through the windshield, partially obscured by frost patterns like frozen ferns, they could make out a large form lying motionless in a sea of white. Jake first thought it was one of his wayward cattle, but as they stepped into the biting wind, the truth materialized before them. A wild Mustang, a magnificent black stallion now dusted white with snow, lay on his side, his breath emerging in shallow visible puffs that dissipated quickly in the frigid air. His legs were tucked strangely beneath his body, and his normally proud head rested heavily against the frozen ground. Despite his vulnerable position, something about his posture seemed deliberate, almost defiant. "He's still alive," Tom observed, kneeling carefully at a distance. Years of ranch work had taught them all to respect the power and unpredictability of wild horses, especially injured ones. But something wasn't right. The Mustang's position seemed unnatural, as if he was deliberately holding himself in place despite obvious exhaustion. His dark eyes, still alert despite his condition, tracked their movements with an intensity that made Jake's skin prickle beneath his layers. Why isn't he trying to get up? Miguel wondered aloud, studying the scene. Even injured horses usually try to stand when humans approach. Jake circled slowly, trying to get a better angle. The snow around the stallion was disturbed, showing signs of a struggle, but the horse himself remained eerily still, except for the rapid rise and fall of his ribcage. It was then that Jake noticed something odd, a slight depression in the snow beneath the horse's body, as if he was sheltering something. The wind howled around them, and Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. This wasn't just an injured horse. This was a creature using his own body as a shield against the storm. But protecting what? As Jake took another careful step forward, the Mustang's eyes locked onto his. In that moment, Jake saw not just an animal but a soul filled with desperate determination. The horse's nostrils flared, and he made a low warning sound. Not quite a whinny, more like a plea. "Boys," Jake said quietly, his voice barely audible over the wind. "I think we need to be very careful here. This horse is guarding something." The three men stood frozen, not from the cold, but from the weight of the moment. Jake slowly raised his hands in a calming gesture, speaking in low, soothing tones to the fallen Mustang. "Easy there, big fella. We're not here to hurt you." Tom pulled out his phone, shaking his head. "No signal. We can't call the vet or wildlife services." The isolation of Wyoming's backcountry, usually a blessing, now felt like a curse. Miguel, the youngest of the three at 35, had grown up around horses on his family's ranch in New Mexico. He recognized the signs of hypothermia in the Mustang's trembling muscles and increasingly glazed eyes. "He's been here for hours, maybe longer. We need to act fast." The stallion's breathing grew more labored as they watched. Jake noticed fresh blood seeping into the snow near the horse's hind legs. "He's injured, might have been caught in old barbed wire or taken a bad fall." As they debated their next move, the Mustang suddenly shifted, a pained grunt escaping his throat. The movement revealed a glimpse of something beneath him, a patch of brown fur that didn't match his black coat. "Jesus," Tom whispered, his eyes widening. "There's another horse under him." The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just an injured Mustang. This was a stallion protecting a member of his herd. Jake's mind raced with possibilities. A mare? A younger horse? The protective instinct of wild horses was legendary, but seeing it firsthand in such extreme circumstances left him speechless. Miguel crept closer, trying to get a better look without spooking the stallion. "It's smaller, whatever it is. He's completely covering it with his body." The wind picked up, driving snow into their faces. They needed to make a decision quickly. The temperature was dropping fast, and both horses were in danger. But moving an injured protective stallion was dangerous work, even for experienced ranchers. "We need supplies from the truck," Jake decided firmly. Ropes, the emergency kit, and those horse blankets. As Tom headed back to the vehicle, the Mustang's eyes followed him with surprising alertness. When Tom returned with the supplies, the horse's agitation increased. He tried to lift his head, his neck muscles straining with effort. "He thinks we're a threat," Miguel observed softly. In his mind, he's the only thing standing between danger and whatever he's protecting. Jake had witnessed countless wonders and heartbreaks in his 4 decades of ranching, but the determination in this wild horse's eyes was something extraordinary. Despite his injuries, despite the killing cold, the stallion refused to abandon his post. They needed to earn his trust, and quickly, before the blizzard claimed them all. They worked out a plan. Miguel would approach from the front, keeping the stallion's attention and speaking softly in Spanish, a language that often seemed to soothe horses. Tom and Jake would carefully try to see what was beneath the horse and assess the situation. As Miguel began his approach, the stallion's ears pinned back, but he didn't have the strength to do more than bare his teeth in warning. His protest was weak yet filled with desperate courage, the last defense of a protector at the end of his strength. That's when they heard it, a small muffled sound from beneath the stallion. A sound that made all 3 men's hearts skip a beat. It wasn't another horse at all. The soft, high-pitched whinny that emerged from beneath the stallion made everything crystal clear. Miguel's eyes widened as he pieced together the truth. "Dios mío, it's a foal. He's protecting a baby." Jake felt his throat tighten. In all his years working with horses, he'd never witnessed anything like this. A wild stallion using his own body as a living shelter to protect a foal from the deadly storm. The blood in the snow took on new meaning. This horse had fought through injury and exhaustion to create a barrier between the baby and the killing cold. The foal must have collapsed, Tom reasoned, his voice thick with emotion. And the stallion, he just lay down on top of it to keep it warm. The mathematics of survival were simple but heartbreaking. The stallion's body heat was the only thing keeping the foal alive, but the effort was slowly killing him. Every minute they delayed increased the risk for both horses. Miguel continued his soft approach, now understanding the stallion's fierce protectiveness. "Tranquilo, papa," he murmured. "We're here to help your baby." Whether the horse understood the intention or was simply too exhausted to fight, his resistance weakened slightly. Jake seized the moment to get a better look at the situation. What he saw made his hands shake. The foal was tiny, probably only a few weeks old, its brown coat visible in patches where the stallion's body had shifted. The baby was unconscious but breathing, completely dependent on the living shield above it. "We need to work fast," Jake announced, taking charge. "Tom, get the warming blankets ready. Miguel, keep talking to him. I'm going to try something." Jake had an idea born from desperation and decades of experience. He couldn't move the stallion by force. The horse would fight to his last breath. But maybe, just maybe, he could convince him they were allies, not enemies. Pulling out his knife, Jake cut open one of their emergency feed bags, spreading sweet grain in the snow just out of the stallion's reach. The horse's nostrils flared at the familiar scent, his hunger warring with his protective instinct. "That's it, boy," Jake encouraged. "We're friends. We want to help." The stallion's eyes darted between the grain and the men, confusion evident in his expression. Wild horses rarely encountered humans who offered food rather than chased them away. The gesture seemed to shift something in his understanding. Miguel noticed the change too. "He's thinking about it. Keep going, Jake." Jake spread more grain, creating a trail leading slightly away from where the foal lay. "Come on, beautiful. Just shift a little. Let us help your baby." The next few moments felt like hours. The stallion's instincts warred visibly. Protect the foal, but also survive. His own survival meant nothing. But perhaps these strange humans could help where he could not. Finally, with tremendous effort, the stallion began to move. Not away from the foal, but just enough to expose the baby's form. The shift revealed the full extent of both horses' condition. The foal was smaller than they'd thought, its ribs visible through its winter coat. It was a filly, a baby girl, her delicate frame shivering despite unconsciousness. With the foal partially exposed, the urgency of the situation hit home. Jake grabbed the emergency blankets while Tom prepared the first aid kit. The little one's breathing was shallow, her body temperature dangerously low despite the stallion's protection. "We need to get them both somewhere warm," Miguel urged, but they all knew the complexity of that task. Moving wild horses, especially a protective stallion and vulnerable foal, wasn't something you did lightly. The wind howled louder, and Jake made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone who didn't understand horses. "We're not moving them. We're building shelter right here." Tom looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "In this storm, the truck has that emergency tent in the back, and we've got tarps. The stallion won't leave the foal and moving the baby might kill it. We work with what we've got. As Tom and Miguel rushed to the truck, Jake stayed with the horses. The stallion watched him warily, but something had shifted in their dynamic. The offering of grain had established a tentative trust. Jake slowly extended his hand, letting the stallion smell him. The horse's nostrils flared, taking in his scent. "I've got a grandson about the age of this foal," Jake found himself saying. "I understand protecting babies. You're a hero, you know that." The stallion's ears flickered at his voice. Up close, Jake could see the toll the ordeal had taken. The horse's eyes were sunken, his coat dull with exhaustion. The wounds on his legs were worse than they'd appeared from a distance, deep claw marks that told a terrifying story. "Cougar," Jake muttered, recognizing the marks. The pieces fell into place, a cougar attack on the herd, maybe targeting the foal. The stallion had fought it off, but paid the price. In the chaos, the foal had become separated from its mother. Tom and Miguel returned with supplies, and they worked with practiced efficiency. Using the truck as a windbreak, they erected a makeshift shelter around the two horses. The tarp walls flapped violently in the wind, but it was better than nothing. Miguel crawled carefully toward the foal with a warming blanket. The stallion tensed but didn't attack. "It's okay, Papa," Miguel soothed. "Por favor." The moment Miguel wrapped the blanket around the foal, something magical happened. The little one stirred, a weak whinny escaping its lips. The sound seemed to give the stallion new life. He nickered softly in response, his head turning to nuzzle the baby. "The foal's a filly," Miguel announced, his hands working quickly to assess her condition. Dehydrated, hypothermic, but no major injuries. "She's a fighter." Jake felt relief wash over him, but they weren't out of danger yet. The stallion's wounds needed attention, but he doubted the wild horse would allow it. They needed a different approach. Tom mixed some electrolytes with warm water. Miguel, keep working on the filly. I'm going to try something stupid. Jake approached the stallion with the medical supplies visible in his hands. Instead of trying to hide his intentions, he showed the horse everything. Antiseptic, bandages, antibiotics. "I know you don't trust humans," Jake said quietly. "But right now, we're all she's got." To everyone's amazement, the stallion remained still. As Jake began treating his wounds, the horse flinched at the sting of antiseptic, but made no move to pull away. His dark eyes remained fixed on the filly, as if drawing strength from her renewed signs of life. As Jake finished treating the stallion's wounds, Tom made a discovery that changed their understanding of the entire situation. Hidden beneath the snow where the stallion had been lying was a small leather pouch, the kind used by local wildlife researchers. "Look at this," Tom called out, brushing snow from the weathered leather. Inside were documents and a tracking tag. "This stallion, he's documented." "And the foal?" Jake asked, his voice tight with concern. Tom took the papers with trembling hands, squinting to read in the dim light filtering through their makeshift shelter. What he discovered sent chills down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Ghost Walker," Tom read aloud. "That's what they called him. He's been monitored for 8 years. He looked up, his expression stunned. "But listen to this. He's known for adopting orphaned foals." Miguel looked up from where he was tending to the filly, his eyes wide with disbelief. "He's done this before? 3 times according to these notes," Tom continued, his voice filled with awe. "Wildlife biologists have documented him taking in foals who lost their mothers. They call him the guardian of the herd." Jake's voice caught as the magnitude of the situation dawned on him. "And this filly?" Tom's expression softened. "She's the daughter of his lead mare, Stormcloud. She was killed in a cougar attack 2 days ago." The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with heartbreaking clarity. The stallion wasn't just protecting any foal. He was protecting his adopted daughter, the baby of his beloved mare. The claw marks on his hide told the story of his desperate fight to save them both. Tom's eyes widened as he continued reading, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There's more. Ghost Walker is 22 years old. That's ancient for a wild stallion." The researchers noted he's been showing signs of age, struggling to maintain his position in the herd. "He knew," Miguel whispered, his hand still gently stroking the filly. "He knew he might not survive the winter, but he chose to save her anyway." The revelation transformed their rescue mission into something more profound. This wasn't just about saving 2 horses, it was about honoring a legacy of compassion that defied the harsh laws of nature. Jake knelt beside Ghost Walker, seeing him with new eyes. The stallion's labored breathing wasn't just from cold and injury, it was the breath of an old warrior making his last stand. Every scar on his body told a story of foals saved, predators fought, and a life lived in service to his herd. "What do we do?" Tom asked, his usual stoicism cracking. The sanctuary mentioned in these papers is 50 miles away. He'll never make it. Before Jake could answer, the filly stirred more strongly. Her eyes fluttered open. Bright, intelligent eyes the color of dark honey. She lifted her head weakly and saw Ghost Walker beside her. The sound she made wasn't quite a whinny. It was more like a question. Ghost Walker responded with a gentle nickering, his muzzle touching hers. In that moment, the love between them was undeniable. This wasn't just instinct or duty. This was family. As night descended and the storm raged on, the three men faced an impossible decision. Risk moving the horses to safety, or watch a legend die fighting to save one last life. We're not taking them anywhere, Jake decided, his voice firm against the howling wind. We're bringing help here. Tom, take the truck and get to town. Get Dr. Sarah Winters. She's the only vet who works with wild horses. Tom's face was a mask of doubt. She's 2 hours away, and in this storm, tell her about Ghost Walker. Jake cut in, pressing the research papers into Tom's gloved hands. She'll come. In this storm, Tom protested, gesturing at the white chaos beyond their makeshift shelter. Jake's eyes locked with his. Tell her who he is. Show her these. Something in Jake's voice, the unwavering certainty, perhaps, silenced Tom's objections. With a curt nod, he took the documents and zipped them safely inside his jacket. Keep your phone on, Jake instructed. Text when you get signal. And Tom, he gripped his friend's shoulder. Drive like hell, but drive smart. We're not losing anybody today. As Tom's truck disappeared into the swirling whiteness, Jake turned back to Ghost Walker and the filly. Miguel had already begun improvising a more substantial shelter, reinforcing the tarp walls with branches he'd scavenged from nearby scrub. The storm had reached its peak. Wind screamed across the plains, threatening to tear away their fragile sanctuary with each gust. Inside, Jake and Miguel huddled close to the horses, sharing what little warmth they had. The temperature was plummeting as darkness fell, and Jake knew the next few hours would determine whether any of them would see morning. The filly, they'd started calling her Luna because of the perfect crescent moon marking on her forehead, had managed to stand, but she swayed dangerously, still using Ghost Walker for support. Her thin legs trembled with the effort, but the fight in her eyes was unmistakable. She needs milk, Miguel observed, watching Luna's instinctive searching movements toward Ghost Walker's side. She hasn't nursed in days. Jake remembered something. There's powdered mare's milk replacer in the emergency kit. We keep it for orphaned calves, but it might work. As Miguel prepared the formula with melted snow and precious warm water from their thermos, Jake noticed Ghost Walker's condition deteriorating. The old stallion's breathing had become more labored, and his eyes were glazing over. The antibiotics and Wyong treatment had helped, but 22 years of hard living in the wild and his recent ordeal were taking their toll. Stay with us, boy, Jake urged, his calloused hand resting gently on the stallion's neck. But he recognized the signs. He'd seen enough animals at life's end to know what was coming. Luna, however, seemed to sense the urgency too. When Miguel offered her the bottle of improvised formula, she drank eagerly, her tail flickering with the first sign of real vitality they'd seen. Ghost Walker watched her feed, and something like peace crossed his weathered features. The parallels weren't lost on Jake. Here was an old warrior ensuring the next generation would survive before he could rest. It was nature's way, but witnessing it firsthand was overwhelming. In the wild, no one would have been there to see Ghost Walker's final act of guardianship. His sacrifice would have gone unmarked, unwitnessed. By some twist of fate, they had become the audience to this ancient drama of life and death. An hour passed, then two. The storm showed no signs of abating, and Tom hadn't returned or texted. Jake began to worry they had made the wrong choice by sending him out in this weather. But Ghost Walker's condition couldn't wait for perfect conditions. Miguel had fallen into an exhausted sleep, his body curved protectively around Luna. Jake remained awake, watching Ghost Walker's labored breathing, counting the seconds between each rise and fall of his chest. The moments stretched longer each time. I see you, Jake whispered to the stallion. I see what you've done. Your story won't be forgotten. Ghost Walker's ear twitched at Jake's voice, a sign he was still present, still fighting. Just when Jake began to lose hope, they heard it, the distant sound of engines, not just one, but several. At first, he thought he was hallucinating from exhaustion and cold, but Miguel jerked awake too, his eyes wide. Someone's coming, he breathed. The convoy that emerged from the storm was like something out of a movie. Sarah Winter's mobile veterinary unit led the way, followed by 2 trucks from the Wild Horse Sanctuary and a wildlife rescue vehicle. Tom had done more than fetch the vet. He'd rallied an army. Dr. Winters, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and weathered hands that spoke of a lifetime working with animals, didn't waste time with pleasantries. She went straight to Ghost Walker, her experienced fingers moving over his body with professional efficiency. "My God," she breathed, looking up at Jake with eyes suddenly bright with emotion. "It really is him. I've been documenting this horse for 15 years. She shook her head in wonder. "You know what he is to these mountains. He's a legend. Other stallions fight, Ghost Walker saves." Her team worked with practiced coordination, IV fluids for Ghost Walker, proper feeding equipment for Luna, and most importantly, a specially equipped horse trailer with heating systems designed for emergency rescue. "His name suits him," Miguel observed quietly, watching the old stallion. "Ghost Walker, protecting even when he's half in the spirit world." Dr. Winters completed her examination, her face grave as she approached Jake. "We need to make a choice," she said, her voice clinical but her eyes betraying her emotion. "Ghost Walker is critical. His age, the hypothermia, the wounds, his body is shutting down. We can try to transport him, but what?" Jake asked, though he already knew. "But he might not survive the journey." She hesitated. "Or we can make him comfortable here. Let him." She couldn't finish the sentence. Ghost Walker made the choice for them. With enormous effort that left everyone breathless, the old stallion stood up on shaking legs. For a moment he stood tall, his profile silhouetted against the tarpaulin wall, a ghost of his former glory, but magnificent still. Then, wobbling slightly, he walked to Luna and gently nudged her toward the humans, toward the vet's trailer, toward safety. The message couldn't have been clearer if he'd spoken it aloud. "He wants us to take her," Dr. Winters whispered. "He's giving her up so she can live." Ghost Walker's selflessness broke something open in Jake's chest. The hardened rancher turned away, unable to speak, his eyes burning. Luna whinnied in distress, trying to return to Ghost Walker as Miguel and one of the sanctuary workers carefully guided her toward the heated trailer. The filly's eyes never left the stallion, her tiny body straining against their gentle hands. Dr. Winters and her team worked through the storm to make Ghost Walker comfortable. They managed pain relief and fluids, but everyone knew they were simply easing his passage. The old stallion had held on long enough to see Luna safe, and now his great heart was ready to rest. Jake knelt beside Ghost Walker again, his weathered hand stroking the stallion's neck. "You did good, old boy. You saved her." The storm began to break as dawn approached, revealing a world transformed by snow. In the growing light, they could see Ghost Walker clearly for the first time. His body bore the map of a life lived fully, scars from battles won, marks from foes defended, and the noble bearing of a true guardian. Dr. Winters sat beside Jake, her clipboard forgotten in her lap. "We've recorded 17 foals that Ghost Walker saved over his lifetime," she shared, her voice soft with reverence. "Luna makes 18, she's his legacy." As if understanding, Ghost Walker's eyes flickered toward the direction where Luna's trailer was parked. A soft nickering escaped him, not a sound of pain, but almost like a goodbye. Miguel had been on his phone and now looked up, his eyes glistening. "The sanctuary just sent an update. Luna is responding well. She's drinking and already showing interest in the other foals." He held out his phone to show them a video of Luna looking stronger in her warm stall, already on her feet. Ghost Walker saw the video. His ancient eyes focused one last time on the screen, on the filly he'd given everything to save. And then, what happened next would stay with everyone present forever. The old stallion lifted his head, summoning strength from some deep reserve, and issued one clear, strong whinny, a sound that echoed across the snow-covered plains and caused every horse in the convoy to fall silent. Then, gently, he laid his head back down. "He's calling to her," Dr. Winters whispered, her professional composure finally cracking, telling her to be strong. Even the skeptics among the rescue team, hardened men and women who'd seen countless animals come and go, stood transfixed. Something deeper than science was happening here, something that spoke to the mystery of consciousness, of love that transcends species and understanding. The sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the scene. Ghost Walker's breathing slowed, each breath more peaceful than the last. Jake, Tom, and Miguel stayed with him, 3 tough ranchers unashamed of the tears that froze on their cheeks. 22 years of freedom, Tom said quietly, his voice thick. 22 years of being exactly who he was meant to be. Ghost Walker passed as the sun fully crested the horizon, his last breath a gentle sigh. He went as he had lived, with dignity, purpose, and love. Dr. Winters stood slowly, her face streaked with tears. She didn't bother to hide. "We'll bury him here, where he chose to make his stand. This place will be marked as a memorial to all the wild horses who show us what courage really means. As they prepared Ghostwalker's body for burial, a strange peace settled over the group. The mountains around them seemed to stand in silent witness, the wind a gentle whisper now rather than a howl. And somewhere in the distance, as if answering Ghostwalker's final call, came the sound of Luna's whinny, high and clear, like a promise. 3 months passed, winter yielding reluctantly to spring. The snow retreated from Wyoming's red desert, revealing purple wildflowers and tender green shoots that pushed defiantly through the thawing earth. Life, as it always did, found a way to continue. Jake sat on his porch, a steaming mug of coffee warming his hands against the morning chill. His phone buzzed with a notification, an email from the Wild Horse Sanctuary. He'd been getting regular updates about Luna, but this one made him pause. The subject line read simply, "You need to see this." With fingers that had grown more comfortable with technology since that fateful February day, Jake opened the video attachment. What he saw made him call out to his wife inside the house. "Mary, come look at this." The video showed Luna, now grown stronger and healthier, her coat gleaming in the spring sunshine. She'd filled out, her once fragile frame now sturdy and vibrant. But it wasn't just her physical transformation that caught Jake's breath, it was what she was doing. In the sanctuary corral, a new arrival had come in the previous day, a tiny Palomino foal, orphaned when its mother was struck by lightning during a spring storm. The little one couldn't have been more than 2 weeks old, its spindly legs still uncertain, its eyes wide with fear at this strange new world without its mother. The video showed sanctuary workers trying to approach the frightened foal, only to be met with trembling retreat. Then Luna appeared in the frame, trotting purposefully across the corral. The sanctuary staff stepped back, watching in amazement as Luna positioned herself between the workers and the orphaned foal. Her posture was unmistakable, protective, vigilant, resolute. Just like Ghostwalker. Mary leaned over Jake's shoulder, watching the video unfold. "What's she doing?" "She's protecting it," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. Just like he protected her. The accompanying message from the sanctuary director explained, "Luna has started doing it already, just like Ghostwalker. She's adopted the little one, won't let anyone near him without her approval. We've never seen behavior like this transfer from one generation to the next. The legacy continues." Jake shared the video with Tom and Miguel that evening. The 3 men gathered around Jake's kitchen table, mugs of coffee forgotten, as they watched Luna's inherited guardianship unfold on the small screen. "It's in her blood," Tom said quietly. "Not by birth, but by example." Miguel nodded, a smile touching his lips. "She learned from the best." The sanctuary had documented Luna's unusual behavior meticulously. Unlike most young horses, who remained playful and self-focused, Luna had developed a keen awareness of vulnerable foals. She would position herself near them during storms, stand guard while they slept, and even intervene when older horses became too rough during play. It was behavior typically seen only in mature mares with their own offspring, never in a yearling, and certainly never toward unrelated foals. "Nature versus nurture," Jake mused, thinking of his own grandchildren and how they mimicked the adults around them. She only knew him for those few hours, but it was enough. The 3 men had visited the sanctuary twice since the rescue, watching Luna's progress from a distance. They'd declined recognition when the story made local news, uncomfortable with being called heroes when they knew who the real hero had been. "The memorial site's becoming something of a pilgrimage," Tom mentioned, scrolling through photos on his phone. "People keep leaving things there. Braided manes, horseshoes, letters." The simple marker they'd placed at Ghostwalker's resting place had indeed become something more. Word had spread through horse country about the stallion who'd sacrificed himself to save an orphaned foal. Riders and ranchers, wildlife photographers and conservationists. They came to pay respects, to stand in the place where nature had revealed its capacity for what could only be called love. The plaque, initially just a small metal marker, had been replaced with something more fitting, a stone carving of a stallion, standing protectively over a foal, with the words "Ghostwalker, Guardian of the Lost." He showed us that love knows no boundaries. Dr. Winters had used Ghostwalker's story in her ongoing battle for wild horse protection legislation, presenting his documented history of foal adoption as evidence of complex social structures and emotional bonds that deserved conservation and respect. His legacy was influencing policy discussions at the state capitol. "I've been thinking," Jake said, refilling their coffee mugs. "That north pasture of mine, the one that borders federal land. I'm not using it for much. Tom and Miguel exchanged glances, sensing where this was going. I've been talking with the sanctuary folks. They need more space, especially for rehabilitation cases, before they're ready to join the main herd. Jake sipped his coffee. Thought I might donate it. Call it the Ghost Walker pasture. Miguel grinned. Your cattle rancher friends will think you've gone soft. Let 'em, Jake shrugged. Some things matter more than reputation. That weekend they drove out to the memorial site together. Spring had transformed the landscape where they'd found Ghost Walker and Luna. Green grass now covered the ground where the stallion had made his final stand. Wild flowers nodded in the gentle breeze, purple lupine, yellow arrowleaf balsam root, and the delicate white of mountain candy tuft. They weren't alone. A small group of visitors stood respectfully at the memorial. A young family with 2 children, an older couple and a woman with a professional camera. They moved aside when they recognized Jake, Tom, and Miguel. Whispers of "that's them" floating on the air. Jake nodded politely, but moved past them to stand directly before the memorial stone. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a laminated photograph, the one he'd printed from the sanctuary's video, showing Luna standing guard over the orphaned Palomino foal. Thought you'd want to see this, old friend, he said quietly, securing the photo at the base of the stone. She learned from the best. As if in response, a wild Mustang appeared on the ridge above them, a young stallion, his coat catching the sunlight as he watched the humans with cautious curiosity. Behind him, partially obscured by sagebrush, was his small band of mares and foals. The stallion tossed his head once, mane flying, before leading his family away over the hill. You know, Tom said, watching them disappear. I've been ranching all my life, always saw wild horses as competition for grazing land, as problems to be managed. He shook his head slowly. Never really saw them until that day. Ghost Walker changed more than just Luna. Miguel agreed. He changed us too. Jake thought about the changes of the past 3 months, his donated land now being prepared for rehabilitation paddocks, the educational programs being developed around Ghost Walker's story, the shifting conversations about wild horse management in their community. One horse, one act of protection and sacrifice, had created ripples that continued to spread. On their drive back to town, they passed a school bus parked along the route to the memorial. A teacher was addressing a circle of children, pointing toward the ridge where the wild Mustangs had appeared. The next generation was learning the story, carrying it forward. The sanctuary had created a special observation area where visitors could watch Luna with her adopted foal. Behind protective glass, people gathered daily to witness something science couldn't fully explain: the inheritance of compassion, the teaching of sacrifice, the continuity of love. Researchers had started a long-term study, documenting Luna's behavior for scientific journals. Terms like cross-generational behavioral adoption and non-genetic trait inheritance filled academic papers. But for those who had been there that February night, no scientific terminology could capture what they had witnessed. Jake kept Ghost Walker's tracking tag in his desk drawer. Sometimes, when doubts crept in about the changes he was making, the raised eyebrows from fellow ranchers, the financial implications of his land donation, he would hold the small metal object in his palm, remembering the stallion's eyes as he protected Luna with his dying strength. In those moments, the path forward always became clear again. 1 year after Ghost Walker's passing, a formal dedication ceremony was held for the new rehabilitation pasture. Hundreds gathered, ranchers and wildlife advocates, scientists and schoolchildren, politicians and press. Historical enemies united by a story that transcended their differences. Luna was brought to the ceremony as the guest of honor, now fully grown and strikingly beautiful. The orphan Palomino foal, named Phoenix by sanctuary staff, never left her side. As the crowd watched in wonder, Luna demonstrated the same protective positioning that Ghost Walker had used to save her life, curving her body to shield the younger horse from the press of unfamiliar humans. When it came time for Jake to cut the ribbon on the new facility, he found himself momentarily unable to speak. The microphone waited as he gathered himself, looking out over the faces turned toward him, faces transformed by a story of sacrifice. Ghost Walker reminded us of something we'd forgotten, he finally said, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. That the strongest aren't those who dominate, but those who protect. That courage isn't about fighting, but about standing guard. That true legacy isn't what we claim, but what we shield from harm. He glanced at Luna, standing calmly in the special enclosure built for her appearance, her body curved protectively around Phoenix just as Ghost Walkers had once sheltered her. We humans think we're the only ones who can teach compassion. Jake continued. Ghost Walker proved us wrong. He taught it to Luna, who teaches it now to Phoenix. And they all taught it to us. The ribbon was cut, the new chapter officially begun. But for Jake, Tom and Miguel, the true memorial wasn't the stone marker or the rehabilitation pasture or even the scientific papers. It was the sight of Luna, head raised watchfully, standing between a vulnerable foal and an uncertain world, the living embodiment of a legacy that would continue long after those who witnessed its beginning were gone. Out on the plains, where the wind carried whispers of ancient knowing, wild horses still ran free. Among them, the stories passed in ways humans would never hear. Tales of a black stallion who defied the cold, who challenged death itself, who taught that love was stronger than survival. Ghost Walker, the stallion who showed us that the truest strength lies not in dominating but in protecting. Not in living, but in what we're willing to die for. His body returned to the earth beneath Wyoming's vast sky, but his spirit ran on in every act of protection, in every sacrifice made for those more vulnerable, in every moment when love transcended the boundaries of blood, of species, of understanding. And somewhere, in every storm that swept across the Red Desert, if you listen closely enough, you might hear the echo of a stallion's call, still watching over what he loved.